Good morning, gearheads. Welcome to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM. We're excited to be bringing you the Italian Grand Prix pre-race show this morning. This is Jon Massengale, joined by Bob Varsha, making you laugh this morning. How are you, Mr. Varsha?
I'm doing fine. Obviously, you finally hit the rev limiter trying to do World Sports Cars at Coda and Formula One from Monza. You have my pity.
Yes, we are doing double duty, and that's why Jonathan Green is not with us this morning, because he's probably on his way to Circuit of the Americas right now.
Oh, no! Oh, mayhem!
Yes, causing mayhem out there, but yes, it's been fun. But I am excited for this, because we've got the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, and like we talked about yesterday, all the history and really shaking up. You looking at the starting grid. Scrolling, and there's Max Verstappen all the way down there at 7. I think that's the big story today. But yeah, in fact, Chris Medland got to catch up with Max Verstappen. Don't get a lot of direct interviews with him, and we'll hear from Chris because he's at Monza. We'll hear from him in a little while. But yeah, Bob, we've got Lando Norris on pole, second race in a row with his teammate right behind him, and these guys are prepped and ready to close the gaps to Max and Red Bull, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, no question. We heard from their CEO, Zach Brown, yesterday, who fully realized, obviously, what an opportunity they have with Red Bull back in 7th and 8th place and the two McLarens right up front. Once again this week, easily the fastest cars out there. Well, I shouldn't say easily, since the top 8 are all bunched on a couple of tenths of a second, but we're used to that now. We could overlay all of the cars finishing and they'd all be right on top of each other. They're all that close. It's going to be hot. Looks like it's going to be in the 90s Fahrenheit at Monza again today. But it'll be the usual chaos. It'll be a packed crowd, Ferrari flags everywhere, sheer delirium if the Ferraris manage to do anything, and they're not out of the hunt, it must be said. McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, all bunched together there in the top 8.
Yeah, it's true. In fact, we're going to do our predictions at the end of the show, but, it'd be a pretty safe bet, not a safe bet, but a reasonable bet to say that one of the Ferraris be on the podium. So I think that would certainly be not out of the realm of possibility. And speaking of Monza, I hear Chris Medland's mic lighting up. Mr. Medland, how are you, buddy?
I'm very well, chaps. Sorry that I wasn't with you for the top of the show, but for some reason my app didn't want to work, so I was running around refreshing it. But I am now out in the sunshine, ready to bring you all the latest, which I can tell you is going to be an ordeal because it is roasting hot here today.
That was going to be my first question. What is the temperature out there?
So we're into the 90s again, probably a degree or two higher than yesterday.
Wow.
So I reckon we're looking at kind of maybe mid-90s.
Wow.
So yeah, it's quite toasty. And the thing is that we've noticed here, actually, this weekend especially, is it hasn't been dropping too much. I went and ran the track last night at after dark, basically. Like the sun had long gone down and it was pitch black by the time I finished. And it was still probably high 80s at that point. So It's just not really cooling down here. So it's been a pretty tough weekend, actually, certainly on the teams and the mechanics.
Chris, that sounds exactly like Austin. I mean, we just don't cool down at night. This time of year, we cooled down into the mid-70s the other night, and I was like, oh, when I woke up, I was like, oh, that's nice. But yeah, it was yesterday at Coda. It was mid-90s, and the humidity was just through the roof. So you're experiencing the exact same thing. I just looked it up. It's 41% humidity out there. Jeez. It says excessive heat warning from the Meteorological Service of Italy. So, yes, spot on.
I try and give you the real feel on the ground here, but I've largely managed to jump around within air-conned areas or shaded areas today. But that changes now because I can tell you the paddock is generally in the sun, and then certainly the grid is going to be absolutely baking.
Well, anything breaking overnight, Chris? It looked pretty quiet.
Yeah, nothing breaking F1-wise, but there was some great action in the junior categories. So we had a Formula 3 champion crown this morning. It was their title decider. And Italy was very happy because it was an Italian who won, Leonardo Fornaroli, who drives for Trident. And he was the championship leader starting the day, but only by a couple of points from Gabriele Mini, who is a Alpine young driver. And Fornaroli, the way the race panned out, he looked quite comfortable for a lot of it. He ended up starting the final lap in 4th place with Mini in 2nd, and he basically needed to overtake the guy in 3rd to win the title. And he did it at the last corner of the last lap. So he threw it down the inside at Parabolica. It was ballsy, brave, genuinely thought it was going to all end in tears. But he pulled it off and won the title with an amazing last lap move. So that was the talk of the paddock for a little while. And then it was the fact that the F2 title has blown up completely as well with Isaac Hadjar, the Red Bull youngster who's been leading.
Mm-hmm.
He had a decent start to the race, but a slow pit stop took him out of the points. But that pit stop happened just before a safety car period that was perfectly timed for the guy in 2nd in the championship, Gabriel Bortoleto. But Bortoleto had started last. He'd crashed out in qualifying, so he started both races in last place. And he won the race from last on the grid.
Wow.
So he jumped to the front with his pit stop at the right time, overtook a few drivers on a different strategy, and won comfortably by 8 seconds from Zane Maloney. And I bring it up because you have Bortoleto and Maloney 1st and 2nd in the race, and they are now 2nd and 3rd in the championship, so closing right in on Hadjar. But Maloney's there, and he's a Sauber Academy driver, so he's wearing all the gear, and you think he'd be on the path potentially towards a future Sauber seat. But Bortoleto's there in McLaren race overalls because he's a McLaren young driver. But the whispers are that there's links between Bortoleto and the Audi F1 team, and essentially a seat at stake next season. Now, I can kind of see it in the sense that his form has been very impressive. If he was to win the F2 title, he would have gone back to back. He won F3 last year, and then he'd be winning F2 as a rookie. So that would be very, very impressive. But
Yes.
it has put him in the frame, it seems, which not many people. Sorry, excuse me a sec. Not many people were really calling that before the summer break, and it was the summer break that kind of led to it, where the rumours started appearing, and he was getting asked about it today after his win. So a bit strange that he was sat next to a Sauber Junior being asked about that, but that's a name to keep on your radar, Gabriel Bortoleto.
Nice.
How'd the Americans do?
So Jack Crawford picked up a couple of points in 9th. To be honest, it could have been better.
Yep.
But Monza is tough. You can, with the slipstreaming and the way positions change, you can get a bit beaten up. And the strategy didn't quite go his way. He would have been in much better shape. He made a great start had we not had that safety car. But still a couple of points, which is 2 points closer to the championship lead with the way things have gone. Juan Manuel Correa, he was on the alternate strategy, so it didn't really work out for him. Hit up a bit of damage and a technical issue, and then retired, sadly. And then Max Esterson was caught up in an incident, I believe, in yesterday's sprint race in Formula 3.
He was.
And then today he also was caught in another incident and was not in the factor for the points. But admittedly, I think a lot of today's focus was on the championship. So it wasn't a day where a bad day for anyone else is really going to come under too much scrutiny.
Well, it sounds like a lot of wheel banging went on in the junior categories.
Yes, plenty. There was a lot going on. It's we've had a lot of incidents, accidents, collisions at every level, and the same actually even in the Porsches. There was a lot of crashing. So I don't know if that's a precursor to what we're going to get in Formula One. It rarely is, if I'm honest. It rarely is. It tends to be that when it comes to the F1 race and we talk up all of these potential collisions, nothing happens. But we'll see.
Right. Well, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is that an omen of things to come?
Hey, speaking of Jack Crawford, he's been on my mind since Logan Sargent lost his seat, thinking, okay, he's definitely if you look at the ladder system, he's the highest ranking American headed, potentially for an F1 seat. And I don't know. I want to ask you, Bob, what do you think about his chances of possibly ending up in an F1 seat? I mean, it doesn't look like next year, but
he's obviously a very good driver. It's kind of hard to gauge what happens based on junior results. I always think that Formula One is such a world apart, even from the junior series, where supposedly these drivers are being groomed for a Formula One future. But still, the gap in terms of lifestyle and media responsibilities and sponsorship commitments, not to mention engineering debriefings and actually driving the race car, which when you think about it is probably where they spend the least percentage of their time actually driving in a race. So, there's so much for the young drivers to get used to. We've seen time and again that drivers that don't particularly impress at the junior levels, but manage to get into a Formula One seat suddenly blossom. And Jacques Villeneuve was my favorite example of that in years gone by. So anyway, Jack Crawford, I think, is quite good. He seems to have the commitment, and maybe some of his toughest days are still ahead of him as he tries to claw his way into a Formula One seat without necessarily winning a championship. I wonder if he does not win this year, does he plan to come back and race Formula 2 again next year, or might he be looking to do something else? But I think he's definitely in that mix of young drivers, some of which Chris just mentioned, who are on the title track. I think he's probably as good as any of them, but there's lots of great talent out there that never gets a chance. So I don't mean to be gloom and doom, but I think Jack Crawford has what it takes, and I wish him the best.
Yeah, what about you, Chris?
So I was just trying to get an update on the tennis from McLaren, but sadly it didn't happen. So all that drama's disappeared. Talking young, I have not seen Zach go that way. Oh, McLaren have lost Zach. Hashtag where's Zach? Let's start it trending. If anyone watching a TV screen sees Zach Brown, let's know. But no, he's gone AWOL. I think that is a very good assessment, actually, of it. I think that what we're seeing, and to be fair to Bortoleto himself, he was asked about this when we were doing a press conference with him after he won his race today, was how do we tell fans like the value of doing well in F2 when the people that are doing well in F2, I've just found Zach Brown. He's not ready for me, but I've just managed to pair him up with his chief of comms. How do we tell people that, winning F2 isn't everything when you look at the people moving up, and you've got Kimi Antonelli and Ollie Behrman moving up, and they are not looking like they're going to win any championships this season. They're not really in the championship mix.
Mm-hmm.
And Hadjar's not really in the frame doesn't seem to be massively in the frame, should I say, for one of the Red Bull RB seats, because we're talking about Liam Lawson instead. And Hadjar could win that as a Red Bull Junior, could win the F2 title. Now, what Bortoleto said is, it just shows the strength and depth. These guys moving up are fully worthy of their chance. Colapinto in the Williams said, I think he'll do well. That it shows how good the class in F2 is. And someone did reference IndyCar with Zane Maloney, who's done a strong test at the Indy road course recently. These guys moving across to IndyCar is a sign of how strong that feeder series is towards F1 and what the level is. As I actually watch Franco Colapinto just putting on his race gloves right now to get into the number 43 Williams for the first time as a Grand Prix driver on a race Sunday. I wonder what's going through his head right now. Well, I'm not sure if he'll speak to us on the grid, but if he will, I'll try him. So yes, these youngsters, I was saying, they're just high quality throughout the board, and Jack Crawford's definitely in that mix. I think he will go and do a lot more testing in old F1 machinery for Aston Martin and not race next year if he doesn't get himself really in the title mix, because I think that's where we've seen. Look at your Jack Doohans, for example, that if you go and get that kind of experience and you act as a reserve, you can prove yourself worthy of being in an F1 seat in the future. So I think that's what's more likely to happen with Jack.
And, think about it. The last time we had an American name mentioned outside of Logan Sargent, it was Colton Herta of IndyCar. The ladder system that F1, F2, F3 is not, wasn't in effect there. What were you going to say, Bob?
Well, I was going to say, the system has evolved and works against itself now. It used to be, if you had the resources and wherewithal, you could start a Formula One team, enter the championship, and show up. My first full season in 1989, we had 30-some cars in Rio de Janeiro at the Hagarapagua circuit. What would it have been, like 15, 16 teams, some of them single-car teams, drivers everywhere you looked. And then that was cut back to the allowable 13 teams that the rules provide now. And you also had a lot of changing of the drivers. And I have to phrase this I don't have to phrase it delicately, because the former Formula One boss, Bernie Ecclestone, put it perfectly. He said, we used to have more new faces in Formula One because a few drivers got killed every year. And that's harsh, but that's really the way it was. So, the opportunity just hasn't been there. And I know Formula One is trying to fix that. We talked yesterday at our post-qualifying show about this idea that's been floated of having a young drivers alone sprint race following the Abu Dhabi weekend. Get 2 cars, a full 20-car field of drivers with 2 or less previous Grand Prix appearances, and have at it. It hasn't passed, probably won't, I would guess, but it's at least one idea put forth to get these young talents in front of people, and then let's try to put together a field based on the best of the best.
Yeah, it's. Hey, you know what? I have a really important question to ask Chris. Chris, did I see that Rick Astley was in the Aston Martin garage this weekend? Did you run across Mr. Astley?
I did not run across him. I haven't seen him. But if you want me
He's never going to let you down.
Well, I was going to say, if you want me to try and find out, I'm never going to give up trying to get there. But I haven't.
Okay.
I have not seen it.
We're going to let Mr. Astley take us to a break. You're listening to Speed City. Back after these messages. You've been rickrolled.
Was that a phony setup? Did you set up Mr. Medland with that? You just wanted to go to Rick Astley on the way to break?
Absolutely.
Oh. I saw a really funny interview with him not too long ago. The big gap between that song being such an unsuspected hit and now, 20, however many years down the road it is, he's got these fully adult children who kind of look at him when the song comes on the radio. Like, that's you, Dad?
I have to look it up because at one point, I think it was like top 5 all-time videos played on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you hear him tell the story about how the video got cut, it's hilarious. I mean, the crew was basically a couple of people, and they had one camera, and they said, okay, stand over there, and when the music starts, dance while you're singing.
Chris?
And, it was that offhand. It wasn't like Beyonce or something. This was a minor effort at best, and it became a huge hit.
Take a guess, Chris or Bob, how many views on YouTube that video has?
Ooh. I used to be better at this, but I haven't used YouTube enough recently to see how quickly it's all grown. I'm going to go, it's been a long time, hasn't it, that it will have been on there. 600 million.
Not even
close. I've never been any.
I'll give you a hint, Bob.
I've never been good at this. Go ahead and give me a hint.
I said Chris wasn't even close.
Well, I'll assume that means under, so I'll go with 2.5 billion.
Close, because 1.5 billion. Actually, Chris was a little closer, but still 1.5 billion views. All right, coming back.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back to Speed City. We're enough with the Rick Astley content, and we're going to get into the prep for the Italian Grand Prix here in just a moment. But Chris, I want to start with something that's fun for you because we don't get a lot of opportunities to interview Max Verstappen, and you were able to grab him. I know it's just a quick little interview, but how did that come about, by the way?
Because I asked for him, basically. If I'm honest, it was Canada. That I also want to say I'm not willing to say we're done with the Rick Astley content yet, but it's a good switch to go to the defending world champion. Yeah, it was meant to be Canada. I was going to speak to him pre-race, and I'd arranged. At that point things were much more comfortable. Red Bull had just agreed an extension with Checo, and it was looking like it's a nice situation of Red Bull. Everything was settling down. So we were lined up to have a chat with him there, and I can't remember what the exact reason was, but it got postponed. So it's like, fine, we do it at a future race. It never felt like a big deal. But as Red Bull's form has dropped away, he, in a sense, become more in demand because everyone wants to know what's going wrong. But also, it's been a little bit of a case of, well, he's not always willing to talk either. So I had to basically line it up quite far in advance. And I think this was the third attempt. But he was in a very good mood. He normally is, to be fair to him. He's normally very chatty when you get to speak to him. And I think it's quite telling, actually, some of these answers just before he jumped on the back of a truck for the driver parade.
Max, going from P7 today, did you learn any lessons about what went wrong in Q3 yesterday?
Well, the problem is that I think our car at the moment is in such a narrow window that as soon as you fall out of that, for whatever reason, then everything is pretty poor, I would say. So that is, we know that the car is very difficult at the moment. So we have a lot of work to do to solve that. I think last night was a good evening to look through a few things, and hopefully in the upcoming races we can turn that around. But it's a lot of hard work ahead.
Is today going to be hard work? Hot, sunny, coming through from 7th place. Do you think the car can give you a chance to go forward?
Not really. I mean, the balance issues are there, so it's going to be tough in the race as well. I hope that we are similar in pace and we can be there. But it's not going to be an easy race for us.
What's your target? What would you be happy with?
Well, it's just damage limitation, to be honest. It's going to be a tough race.
All right, well, good luck today. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, definite. Interesting comments. Wow. Like he said, talking about looking at the data last night and just damage limitations.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I have a question for you. The story circulated that after or late in the Dutch race at Zandvoort a week ago, that 23 second margin of victory for Lando Norris was enhanced by the fact that Max wasn't trying very hard. He knew he was safe from third place, trying to make a point with his team by letting that gap grow and grow and grow. Have you heard anything like that?
I haven't heard that, and I disagree with it from what I saw. I think the way that the balance of the Red Bull changes and switches, and there was a comment Max made, I think, on Sunday night about how close it got with the cars behind, and he had been measuring it. He had settled for second, but he was actually measuring it so that there wasn't a risk that his drop-off would be even bigger and put him under any pressure if those guys got to him. So it's one of those where, you know where the end of the race is. You know how many laps you're doing. You know how much time you've got to play with. And you pace yourself to the end in the safest possible way, basically. So there wasn't a message to Red Bull in any sense, but it was more a case of he genuinely felt he could have been under pressure from Piastri, especially if Piastri got past Leclerc. So he had to make sure he still had something in hand to try and fight.
Very professional. Yeah. Well done. I'll go with your version.
I mean, it's interesting. Speaking of interesting and conspiracy theories, I went digging last night as promised because I think, Bob, it was your conspiracy theory about Haas and qualifying and Kevin Magnussen having an interesting moment at Parabolica and whether it could have been intentional. Well, I spoke to Eo Matsu off the record, as in off the mic, and I said, you could be honest here because I'm not necessarily going to tell anyone, but because he was honest, then it's a good honesty. I can tell you, he was like, absolutely not. What the TV cameras didn't pick up was that Kevin had gone off at Ascari, so the corners before, so he'd run wide into the gravel. Not so much that it ruined his lap, but enough that it was basically going to ruin his lap. He then got to Parabolica with dirty tyres, and he went to turn in, and the car wouldn't turn. He'd got gravel over his tyres. Now, what he said as well, though, is he said, if you could have heard my intercom, I was swearing like crazy on it because what I thought at the time was it actually had cost us both cars getting through to Q2 because he thought everyone else was going to improve. That he thought the improvement in lap time that was going to come was going to knock them down because Hulkenberg was hampered by that yellow flag. And he said he was actually really surprised when he finally saw the outcome. But in the moment it happened, he thought Kevin had screwed them, basically, is the terminology he used. So it was in a weird way the reverse of what we thought. But it does bring for an interesting point where I was the same, that I thought we were going to see much more improvements than we got in terms of lap times at the end of Q1 and again at the end of Q3, and Red Bull were the big ones that we talk about there. But it shows how tricky it is on every lap for every driver to keep their tyres in the right shape, to get the lap perfect, and to kind of read the evolution of the track, the grip levels. And when it's this close, it's much more heightened. When we're talking like less than a tenth of a second between cars, you need to get everything perfectly. And these tiny details actually make a huge difference. And we're not seeing people making big improvements because they can't afford to have a safe lap and then a push lap on their second run. They have to go at it from the start, take every advantage they've got. So I think it's a bit of a reflection of just how competitive everything is up and down the field. That we've actually seen, a huge shock in Red Bull being on the fourth row, basically because they couldn't find an improvement on their final run.
Yeah, that's a great analysis, and I'm happy that K-Mag is blameless. You certainly don't want to go into that corner with dicey grip. It is so fast. And once again, it points out how these guys, there's, what did Jackie Stewart once said? There's only about 4, 5, 6 guys in any race that have a chance of winning. But everybody, just to compete as tightly packed as we're seeing in recent seasons, you're on the edge all the time. Look what happened to Kimi Antonelli. I mean, he goes out in the Mercedes, his first time. He's in terribly hot conditions on a brand new and unknown racetrack. And he's out there putting up purple sectors everywhere before he threw the thing off the track. If he had known, the analysis was in 2-3 laps, he had killed the rear tires on the Mercedes, and that's what stepped out and threw him into the wall on the very last corner. And then these guys have to deal with this every single lap. How do I get right to the edge without going over, keeping in mind the tires, fronts and rears, left side and right side, and all the other factors they have to contend with as they're, flying around at these mind-boggling speeds, plus 200 miles an hour at several points around this racetrack. It's really a phenomenal exercise.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I want to, not everybody may have heard yesterday's show, but I wanted you to talk about the way Total Wolff was talking about Kimi Antonelli's, especially, I guess, his first lap and his form in general. I thought that was fascinating.
It really, really was. There's I think part of the reason for it, obviously, was because they were going to promote Antonelli. After the crash, he said that what we saw in 1.5 laps was astonishing because of the pace he showed. Now, I'm not sure many other drivers would have got that treatment, having just wrecked a car a little bit. But it's the fact that they were going to give Antonelli that race seat. And also, it was very impressive in terms of the first lap, just the fact he went beyond on the second. But also, I think Toto's a smart guy. You've got to talk up the person you're about to put in. You want to give him confidence. You also want to build hype at the weekend where Kimi Antonelli is going to be an Italian on the F1 grid next year, which we haven't had for a while since Antonio Giovinazzi. And we're here in Monza, and I'm looking at a bank of mainly red, I'll admit, clad fans, but the Italian flags everywhere. And the noise they made, even for Antonelli in the junior races, racing for Prema in Formula 2 this weekend, was so noticeable how much they're behind him here. So I think Toto was pretty key to just kind of basically give the positive story at the right time. It's why they waited. He actually said it was 5 minutes after Lewis Hamilton told him he was leaving for Ferrari. He made his decision that Antonelli would take that seat. But they just kind of went through the process and tried to see if they could get Max Verstappen. But he said Antonelli was going in there. Now, if they knew that all that time ago, they could have announced it a lot earlier. But they wanted to do it this weekend. So Toto's been very, very complimentary about Kimi and his potential. I worry, in a sense, that it might be slightly too much because people do have short memories, but also F1 is an unforgiving place. And as good as you may be, generally we see even drivers like Max Verstappen cutting their teeth in a team without the pressure of running at the front. He was at Toro Rosso. He was allowed to make his mistakes for 1.5 years before they put him in the Red Bull. George Russell was the same in the Williams. Kimi Antonelli, the faith Mercedes have is they're putting him straight into a car that even today could be a race-winning car in the hands of George Russell or Lewis Hamilton. That's going to be such a tall order from him. So I think he needs every bit of confidence and certainty that the team fully believes in him before he does make that step up next year.
Yeah, and that shed some light on why James Vowles was so supportive of Logan Sargent despite misstep after misstep. And by the way, we've heard that James Vowles has apologized to Mick Schumacher, whom he appeared to dismiss as good but not special when they chose to put Colapinto in the car rather than the experienced Mick Schumacher.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, those were his words though, weren't they? That he said that.
They were. Yeah, I was in that press conference, and he said that Mick has made really good progress since he was last racing for Haas. He's done a lot of testing with McLaren and Alpine and Mercedes in former cars. So he said, what people saw when he was racing for Haas is going to be very different from what they would see if he went to racing right now. I've just had to get out of Charles Leclerc's way. He sat in his car, being wheeled up the grid and waving at the fans. The official Ferrari fan club is lining the pit straight. He was saying, he's definitely better than he was, but let's be honest. And this is the thing he said. We've got to be brutally honest that what we're looking at is two drivers who would be good drivers, and he meant Colapinto as well. He's talking about the guy he put in is a good driver, but not special. And by special, he meant Ayrton Senna-esque, Max Verstappen-esque. And he's like, these guys are not future definite world champions, but they are very good drivers. So we put the one in that we've invested in and that we're trying to learn more about. That's why he made that decision. But a lot of people just took the quote out of isolation that Mick is good but not special, and ran with just that as like a dig at Mick, which I thought was maybe slightly unfair because, let's be honest, one of the things that must be admired about James Vowles, whether you agree with some of his decision making or not, is that he has been brutally honest at all times.
Yeah,
he was talking about the meritocracy, the fact that Sargent was under pressure. He talked about where Williams has gone wrong, when it's been his fault, when it's been someone else's fault. And this time he said that basically Logan hit his ceiling. They saw that he couldn't really give them any more in terms of performance, and they weren't seeing any more progression. So they felt, okay, he's at his limit. We need to find a replacement. But then also saying even the guy we're putting in, there's no guarantee that he's going to be special, but we'll find out. And you might as well find out with someone you've invested in than someone else's driver. So I felt for him a bit, but he did get a dressing down from Corinna Schumacher next month. Outside the paddock on Thursday night, Friday night, for those comments. So that's, I think, also something that contributed to that apology.
Well, I think that's exactly. Michael Schumacher's just such a legend, and his fan base is just so supportive that any dig on Mick would just be kind of considered a slight on Michael, almost is what it feels like. So,
well, it is interesting. Toto, in upbraiding James Vowles, chose his words carefully. He said it was unnecessary. It might have been, better left alone. And then Corinna going after James Vowles. I mean, is anybody arguing that Mick Schumacher, based on what we know about his Formula One abilities and achievements, is special? Certainly not like his dad, but there ain't many of those lying around. So yeah, I guess it was a matter of semantic niceties and politeness rather than whether James Vowles was speaking the truth as he sees it. So
yeah, I mean, look,
end of
he's an
episode.
He's an F1 team principal. We want him speaking the truth. All right, we're going to go to break, but before we do, I do want to give a shout out to Dave O'Neill, who normally is with us during the season, but he's got another job in IndyCar, and I want to say congrats to Dave. Two of my favorite people in motorsports, Dave O'Neill and Connor Daly, with a podium yesterday in IndyCar. So congrats, guys. We'll be back right after these messages. All right, let's check in with the boys on YouTube. Sorry, guys, we were doing Rick Astley earlier. So we got the usual crowd. We got Mike Bowles, TW, David Lawrence. Good morning, David. David's joined us. Kevin Kelly. Kevin said, my animals let me sleep late. What are you doing, Kelly? You're just now getting up? David Lawrence says, F1 is a business, and all I'm going to say is Logan came through F1 at the wrong time. I think Logan and Mick would be great if they were given more time testing. Slow burners, if you will. Yeah, I think you could always make that argument with either one of those.
There's never enough time.
David asked me if I got
by the way,
yeah, go ahead.
Connor Daly is a terrific guy and a great driver, and he totally screwed my IndyCar fantasy effort yesterday at Milwaukee Mile. Just totally blew me out of the water.
Oh, that's funny. David Lawrence says, did you get a nap yesterday? Talking to me about before the Lone Star Le Mans start. No, I did not, but man, it was fun out there. So I'm going to be back out there in a little bit.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah, it was fun, man. It was, man, the sports car. I mean, every time I'd see one of those hypercars, like, oh God, that's the best looking one. And then another would come on and go, oh my God, that's the best
Oh
looking
no,
one.
that's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
What's the weather going to be like out there today?
same as Monza, almost exactly. Mid 90s, humid. Now we had a chance of rain today. I don't know if it's been dropping all week. It was at like 70%. Now it's down to like 40, but I hope we get a little sprinkle. Maybe shake things up a little bit out at Coda today.
Yeah. See a rooster tail or two.
Yeah. Let's see. Where are we going to go? We got your grid coming up too, Bob. Chris, are you stalking anybody?
I am at the moment, yeah. I'm stalking Ollie Oates of Alpine. Might be able to grab him when we come out the break. Just a new voice.
All right, your mic is starting to drop just a little, not out, but here we go.
Hello, I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back to Speed City. We're about a half hour away from the Formula One Italian Grand Prix. If you just joined us, grab yourself a cup of coffee, get yourself ready, and we're going to help you do that. This is Jon Massengale, Bob Varsha. Mr. Varsha, why don't we shake things up a little bit and try to get your grid in now before Chris's microphone gets too busy, because he's out there stalking people as we speak. I'm looking on television and seeing lots of activity on the grid, but let's start with your grid and get us ready for this race.
You're just trying to maximize the chances that he'll have an opportunity to interrupt me. But there it is, folks. No extra charge.
Yeah, you know he is. You absolutely know he is.
All right, on the starting grid. P1, Lando Norris in the
That's
McLaren,
it, Bob.
his fifth
I'm
career.
actually going to cut you off straight away, Bob. I'm not joking either. He just started the grid here, but I got Ollie Oates with me, the new Alpine team principal. First time I get to annoy you on the grid. Thank you very much. So how have you settled in so far? First couple of race weekends?
Quickly, I'd say. I've only had a week, haven't I? No, it's been good. I mean, the guys are all, I'm a lucky guy. It's a good bunch at Enstone, and yeah, I'd say it's very similar to my normal day job before, just a lot bigger. Yeah.
Yeah, that normal day job was as a boss of high tech. So racing in junior categories. You mentioned the guys you're just laughing with your some of your mechanics here. I can't believe they have to wear full fireproof suits in this heat, black ones as well because of the Alpine livery. But what do you think your cars can do today, starting from 15th and 14th, I believe, if my memory serves right?
Yeah, I mean, look, we showed in Spa, Zandvoort, we can fight for points. We knew here it's a little bit more tricky for us for different constraints. We just saw the weather as we got to the grid. That could be quite fun. At the end of the day, we want to target points. We're also realistic. That's going to be hard today. But, it's a hot day. And as we know, turn one decides most of the race as well. So let's see. Yeah.
Well, what happens to you after this? When you get back to Enstone, is that a proper debrief time and you work out how you want to start maybe tweaking things and improving things to this team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was announced just before shutdown. Good and bad of that. It meant shutdown wasn't really a shutdown for me. But I think, the last week already, we're sort of, everything's quick in F1. You need to get moving. It'd be nice after 2 double headers to spend a bit of time at the factory again. But at the end of the day, it's the same as always. It's just Monday, you're in and you're cracking on. Yeah.
Well, we'll let you crack on with the race first and then with that. But thanks for your time and good luck today. There you go, Bob. You're back on after not even getting to row 1.
That's interesting. I mean, that Ollie, 2 things about Ollie. Number one, I think he's the youngest guy
he's 36.
in his 30s to be running a Formula One operation. Yeah. And number 2, he's not French, but there you go. Okay. Where was I? Oh, pole. Lando Norris for McLaren, his 5th career pole, 4th of the year, first back-to-back poles of his career. His average speed of 163.3 miles an hour is less than a second off Lewis Hamilton's 2020 wreck back in the days of screaming V8s. No, wait, I'm sorry. That was in a Mercedes hybrid. Oh, well. Anyway, he has lost the lead in all 4 previous pole appearances, has young Lando. Oscar Piastri starts P2 in the 2nd McLaren, just a 1/10 of a second slower than his teammate, presenting the charging McLaren team with a massive opportunity to actually overtake Red Bull in the Constructors' World Championship. It's McLaren's first front row sweep at Monza in 12 years. Row 2, George Russell in the Mercedes, only his 4th top 3 start in 15 races. He watched as his future teammate Kimi Antonelli crashed his car in practice on Friday morning, then missed the first 20-odd minutes of practice too, while mechanics finished fixing the car. He's definitely the Mercedes team leader now. P4, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Anything less than a 1-2 sweep in qualifying is, of course, unacceptable to the thousands of fervent tifosi here this weekend, but the red cars are certainly in the mix, just 0.006 of a second apart on the grid. P5, speaking of which, Carlos Sainz in the second Ferrari, celebrating his 30th birthday today. Happy birthday, Carlos. Pole sitter for this race last year with a lap at 1:20.294, a full second slower than Norris achieved in winning this year's pole. P6, Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes tied with Michael Schumacher for the most wins here at Monza with 5 each. Hamilton said he was furious with himself for his qualifying run, thinking he should have taken pole. He's 6th. Row 4, P7, Max Verstappen and Red Bull, the winner here a year ago, but coming off a less than stellar run for him a week ago in Zandvoort, and needed a tow from teammate Sergio Perez to avoid being out-qualified by the Mexican. Worst start for Max since Singapore last year. P8, the aforementioned Sergio Perez in the second Red Bull, having qualified the top 10 just 3 times in the last 9 races. Checo played the good soldier and towed his teammate to a time that switched their positions. Perhaps the influential Dr. Marco took notice. Row 5, P9, Alex Albon and the Williams, whose last 5 starts were 16th, 9th, 13th, 10th, and 19th. With American Logan Sargent out of the second car, the team is fully focused around Albon. P10, Nico Hulkenberg in the Haas. As promised a week ago in Zandvoort, the 7-figure sponsorship rebate to former supporter Uralkali was made shortly after the Dutch race. The trucks escaped to Monza on Monday. It's the German's 7th top 10 start this season. Row 6, P11, Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. Missed Q3 by just 1/100th of a second. He described the team's mood going into qualifying yesterday as pessimistic, so to start this close to the points is probably a positive sign for the Spaniard. P12, Danny Ricciardo in the Red Bull, winner of this race for McLaren way back in 2021. Danny Rick was happy with his qualifying and then said the hard Pirelli tire is an unknown since no one had used it yet, which I think is curious because the only driver who did use the hard in practice was his teammate, Yuki Tsunoda. Row 7, P13, Kevin Magnussen on the Haas found himself running 14th in the closing seconds of Q1, then wobbled in the final high-speed Parabolica corner, kicking up dust, bringing out a brief yellow flag. He wouldn't have done that on purpose, would he? Well, as Chris found out this morning, no, he didn't do it on purpose. P14, Pierre Gasly for Alpine, the incumbent Frenchman at Alpine and 2020 winner here at Monza. Still, still making the best of a difficult situation for Alpine as they try to recover from where they were before the summer break. Row 8, P15, Esteban Ocon in the second Alpine, putting both cars into Q2. That is to qualify as progress for a team still trying to decide what it wants to be in 2025 and beyond. Team advisor Fabio Briatore insists, I should say Flavio Briatore, Fabio's the muscle boy with the long hair, insists the outfit is not for sale. P16, Yuki Tsunoda in the second RB says he's confused by the car, which left him out of Q1 knocked him out in Q1 for the first time in 3 races. He's the only driver to test the hard Pirelli compound, as I mentioned, which could be a double-edged sword. He may know what the rubber will do, but he may not like it. He is fresh out of the hard tire that everybody is going to rely on. Row 9, P17, Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, a victim of that mysterious off by Kevin Magnussen in the closing seconds of Q1, but since all the gaps here are minute, he sees a chance of making something happen. P18, Franco Colapinto for Williams, in for American Logan Sargent. Colapinto was plucked from 6th place in the F2 standings coming into the weekend, the first F1 driver from Argentina since Gaston Mazzacani raced for the Prost team in 2001. In related news, Williams picked up 2 sponsors this week. Guess where they're from? Argentina. And by the way, if you want to know what happens to a driver after he leaves Formula One, go to Wikipedia and look up Gaston Mazzacani. I couldn't believe it. Row 10, final row.
I'm afraid
P19, Valtteri Bottas for Sauber. looking more and more like the pick to keep his seat at the team. The team switched settings from Friday to Saturday, then switched back when that made the car worse. They're the slowest 2 cars in the field for the second race in a row, and all that futzing around with their settings probably tells you they are lost. P20, caboose on the field, Zhou Guanyu in the Sauber, another victim of the Magnussen off in Q1. A team spokesperson this week said Zandvoort, where the cars finished 2 laps down and last on the field, was the rock bottom moment for the team this season. All I can say is hold that thought. And there you go.
Hold that thought. Hold my beer.
Yeah, right. Drive my Sauber? I don't think so.
All right. Well, the timing is good. Let's go ahead and get our last break in. And when we come back, we'll be just about 10 minutes from the Italian Grand Prix. Back after this. All right. Hot on YouTube still here. Let's see what the ladies and gentlemen are talking about out here. David Lawrence. We got a newcomer in the booth here. It says Brady Armt. Brady, welcome.
Huh?
Yep. He showed up thinking there was maybe a live F1 stream. He says, "Oh, so it's radio." And he says, and everybody explained to him what it was, and he said, thank you. Well, welcome, Brady. Either way. Sorry, you have to look at us. You don't get to look at F1 cars. We'd have to pay $1 gazillion to get the television rights, which we're not ready to write that check. Let's see what else.
Everyone can donate to our crowdfunder.
Yeah, we'll do a crowdfund. Last I heard, I think
Right.
the last media rights, last television rights that ESPN paid were around $100 million. I don't know what period of time that was, but so yes, the crowdfund.
Yeah, that's the deal they're under right now. I think it's 90 million.
Yeah, that sounds right, Mike.
But they don't want an American commentator.
Yeah, dang it, Greeny's not here. He could write that check. Mike Bowles says, "Shout out to your producer Casey. He got Rick Astley ready to go. That was good. Yeah, guys, you have no idea what all Casey does. He does an amazing number of roles here at this radio station."
Casey, play yourself a round of applause. Go ahead, hit the button.
That's good, Bob. Let's see. 12 minutes. Yeah, I was surprised to see how young Oliver Oaks is. I saw a photo and I was like, wow, he's a pup. 36 years old.
Yeah.
Chris, are you as old as Ollie?
I'm a year younger than him, so we're similar.
All right, here we go.
Hi, this is Gene Haas, and this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, we've got about 12 minutes before the Formula One Italian Grand Prix. I want to talk about Ferrari. We got Charles Leclerc starting fourth, and Carlos Sainz starting in fifth. It is Monza, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Ferrari cars because early in the show I said I thought it would be a pretty decent shot for them to get into, let's say, into a podium position. I think that's probably if you're a betting man, that's probably the most likely highest position you would get to. Would you argue with that at all? I mean, look, Russell's in third right now, but I kind of feel like that he drove a really amazing lap to get himself into third yesterday.
He did indeed, yeah. So I'm just going to interrupt very quickly with James Fowles again, because James spoke to example, and it was maybe a bit more downbeat. Let's get out there and try and hear Alex starting in the top 10 with its upgraded Williams. What's your fight looking like today? Where could you finish?
I think realistically, we're fighting Haas and Aston Martin behind for points, real points today. Maybe, depends how the race goes, Perez as well. It's been a long run pace, but closer to last than I would have expected. But the reality behind it, you need a good start. You can see, I mean, you can't even see the apex of turn one. Whenever that happens, it means that you have a long one down there, so anything can change. As long as we have a good start, though, I think we're in a good position to score points.
And then what about car number 2, Franco making his debut? He's starting 18th, but he's shown some pretty good progress up to qualifying.
I'm actually very happy with it. Yes, I know he went off, but FP3, he was 2/10 off. That's what I asked of him. Then going to qualifying, he was actually only a 10th off Alex when he made that mistake, pushing too hard too soon. And there's no room for error in the sport, but still a good indication of what potential he has, and hopefully reflecting what I said to the world.
And just finally, North American radio, but how tough was that call to drop Logan?
It's, again, I've said this a few times this year, but one of the hardest things I've done. Drivers give everything. And it's a different matter if you have someone who's not willing to wake up in the morning and give you that heart and soul. He was. But we reached the limit of what he was capable of.
Thank you for your time and good luck today.
I'm glad you asked that question, Chris, even though he's said it before. I mean, you could hear it in his voice even, the fact that the drivers do give their all. And, let's pause a moment and give Logan Sargent the credit he deserves for doing what he did, because it wasn't like he was, some prima donna or something, or, acting that way. He was genuinely doing the best he could do and putting the effort into it. And you could tell that it was painful, that he wasn't getting the results that he wanted to get. So kudos to Logan Sargent.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry for totally dodging the question you had actually, but I was also distracted before that, watching Flavio Briatore telling Formula One security who could and couldn't stay on the grid because they were his guests. One of which was Carlos Alcaraz, the tennis champion who was knocked out of the US Open a bit early. And I tried to get an interview with Carlos about 5 minutes ago, and he said he's not talking to anyone. But it was a hilarious scene where Formula One security were trying to clear the grid, and Flavio shooing them away and being like, no, they stay with me. I'm not sure that's quite how it works, but anyway, Flavio has that power.
Well, I mean, look, I'm sitting here saying Ferrari, could they get on the podium? Let's not forget that anything could happen. It's still a F1 race just because the McLaren was so dominant in qualifying yesterday. And look, we saw Lando not get a good start last weekend. They had that. Did you ever find out? Was it what we thought? Was it clutch issues because it looked like an engine bog? He had good reaction time. Was that the end result there last weekend?
The team wouldn't actually give it away. I think that's data they don't want people to know.
That's true.
But they did seem to suggest that they got something wrong because it was both cars. So, but speaking of teams that maybe got it wrong this weekend, I'll be very quick here. But I've got Christian Horner with me. And Christian, you've made your way forward like you normally would, but your cars are a couple of rows back from where we are right now. How unexpected was that?
Yeah, there was just a bit of a fuss with the tyres on that car, so just having a look at which ones they were running. But yeah, look, it's a lot hotter today, and it's going to be a real challenge with the graining. But that's the same for everybody. So let's see.
What's your realistic target then with Max from 7? So straight to see that, but we look forward to watching it play out, and I guess we'll come and find out how you get on later on. Thank you.
Hey, Chris.
I'm going to shoot off the grid, everybody.
Hey, we missed what Christian Horner said when you asked him where he thought Max could end up.
He said top 5, and he said it with a grimace on his face. I think it pained him to say, rather than, there's been times I feel like they're talking their chances down to exceed them, and the way they say things just, I don't know, seems a little bit more upbeat than what they're actually saying. That wasn't the case then. That was someone who I think was just kind of resigned to saying top 5. Maybe a bit frustrated. We've seen races here before get a bit stale, shall we say, in terms of you don't have the top speed to overtake, you get stuck in a bit of a DRS train, and not a lot happens. Potentially, that's what he's fearing here. If Max doesn't make progress at the start, then I think the pace of all the cars is so similar that you could well see that he's stuck at the back of that pack in 7th place and not really going anywhere.
Yeah. It's kind of like oval tracks, especially the small ones, where the movement of the cars around the track create a prevalent wind. And it's kind of like that in what is likely to be a drafting race like Monza, where the cars are just lined up, nose to tail, everybody getting quicker as a group because of the aerodynamic effect. So it's really tough to get out there and pass, even with DRS.
Hey, I want to talk about Mercedes here just real quick, guys. We're getting down to about 5 minutes because we haven't really talked about Mercedes much. I mentioned Russell, and I thought he had a pretty great lap to get where he is. But I want to play this clip because Lewis Hamilton, I don't think I've ever heard him quite this despondent in his post-qualifying interview yesterday because he's starting down in P6. Let's hear from Lewis Hamilton.
Today? Yeah, because I'm not very good. Simple as that. I'm just just not very good at qualifying.
But you just haven't suddenly got bad. Do you have the
No,
idea about?
I clearly have. I can't put a lap together, and it's unbelievably frustrating. But I'll keep working at it, and that's all I can do.
Oh, Lawrence Barretto said you just haven't suddenly got bad, and Lewis Hamilton clearly I have gotten bad. That was pretty. I mean, we've all heard Lewis get a little emotional, but that was pretty self-deprecating there.
Well, he wears his heart on his sleeve, no doubt about it. And Lewis, and this is not a discredit to him, relies heavily on the team, perhaps more so than Max Verstappen or other drivers you could name. Lewis needs the input, the feedback, and so on. He needs the help, basically, to put together the car he needs to succeed at any given racetrack in any given set of circumstances. So, yeah, it's hard to hear a great champion like him down on himself so badly. But, he said earlier this season, perhaps acknowledging that George Russell, his teammate, is a terrific qualifier. He said, I probably am not going to out-qualify George the rest of the season. So, there's a certain amount of anticipation in, or self-confirmation, I guess you'd say, in terms of the fact that, hey, look, I said I'm not going to be able to qualify with George, and here's proof.
Yeah.
It must be said, too, that he thought he should be on pole. So I think that was a big source of a lot of his problem.
Yeah, exactly. It must be said that he has outqualified George saying those things, which is always interesting to see. And yeah, as you say, he spoke to Sky Sports, I think, afterwards as well. And he said he was absolutely furious. They were his words, absolutely furious with his own performance because he felt he should have been on pole. And he said the car had the pace. He didn't put it together. So I think that's also where you see that, these are champions, as you say. They're used to success and they demand success out of themselves. And they're never going to be happy if they even fall slightly short, because ignore the position he's starting, ignore 6th place. He's less than 2/10 off pole position. So he was there or thereabouts, but that was a session where you needed to put it all together. And he didn't quite do it. And it was very costly with where his grid position is. But he seems more upbeat today. I can say that from seeing him on the driver parade earlier. I think we're going to see a pretty determined Lewis Hamilton. And won't it be interesting to see Hamilton versus Verstappen side by side into turn 1?
Yes, that is a really good point, Chris. Thank you. I thought of that earlier and forgot. So thank you, because that will be fun. Yeah. And to your point, less than 2/10 all the way down to Hamilton. That's just amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's critical to remember, I think. It's so tight, so close.
Hey, so I definitely want to...
Sorry, Greg Maffei is just giving me the big thumbs up for saying SiriusXM. I heard someone shout SiriusXM through my headphones. Turn around, it was Greg Maffei with his thumb up. The big boss is here in Monza.
That's great. Yeah, because he's...
And if he weren't, he'd be listening to us.
He might be, Bob.
I'm sure that's where he's going right now. Yeah, I'm sure he's going there right now. He doesn't really watch F1 TV. I'm just trying to get a nod from his head of communications. Greg doesn't watch F1 TV, does he? He listens to SiriusXM. Yes, was the answer. He's not allowed to speak on record, but he said yes.
That's great. Hey, guys, we're at 90 seconds. Let's go ahead and get our predictions. Bob, you want to give us a start here?
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. I'll go with Norris, Piastri, and Charles Leclerc completing the podium.
Okay. Chris Medland.
I'm going to go Norris, Russell, Piastri.
Okay. I'm going to go Norris, Piastri, Hamilton. After all of our excitement, just talking about Lewis Hamilton with his passion in his voice. Let's see. We got just a few seconds left here. I definitely wanted to think about. I'm going to be watching Colapinto. That is, to me, having a young, brand new driver. That's going to be really exciting to watch him. I'm going to be watching Albon down there trying to get into the points, battling with Hulkenberg and Ricciardo in 12th. Who knows? Maybe we get some points there. But hey, guys, we are out of time now. Stick with us after the race because we're going to bring you a full 1-hour post-race show. Chris Medland will have his mic live in Monza. And Bob Varsha will be back with us. And I'll be out of Coda, but I'll be there.
Careful what you promise.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Stay here for the race, and we'll be back after the race.